You have the campaign chair, who will appear in court today. You have Michael Cohen, who was a political advisor and someone who worked at the Trump organization, under indictment. You have Gates as well, and you have Roger Stone.
Under indictment on businesses that had nothing to do with the president. Let me make one thing clear, John. The president did nothing wrong. There was no collusion on his part.
The end of that statement. There was no collusion on his part. Not there was no collusion anymore. Apparently, they're done with that. There was no collusion on his part. Tonight, I can tell you that may be the most suspicious denial we've heard yet from the Trump White House. We have a special panel to get into all of this. A former associate of Roger Stone and a former Trump campaign aide, Sam Nunberg, who has been interviewed by the Mueller probe, and we've talked to you on the beat about what they asked about Roger Stone. Former Watergate prosecutor Jill Wine-Banks is here with me in New York. Longtime Republican aide and founder of the Weekly Standard, Bill Kristol, now the director of the group Defending Democracy Together, and former federal prosecutor Seth Waxman. Jill, very significant indictment. What jumps out to you?
There are so many things that jump out. The first is how detailed the emails are in terms of what was said and how foolish it was for Roger Stone to lie about them, because he had to know he had created those emails and had received those emails, and yet he went and blatantly lied to Congress saying, I have no emails that connect me to Russia. There are none. He denied all of those things that are right in front of our eyes now in this indictment. So you can't read it and not conclude that he is guilty of those crimes when they say he lied about them. And of course, the most horrible thing to me as a dog lover is his attempt to intimidate the witness by saying, I'm taking your dog. That's
that being
terrible.
Person two, who we've interviewed here, is Randy Credico, and who was, according to Mueller, they look at that as a serious tampering to intimidate him out of truthful testimony. With regard to criminal exposure by the Trump campaign, what passage to you is most significant in this indictment?
Well, of course, the passage that says that a senior official pressured Roger to do something, and that that was at the direction of someone above that senior official that they did it. So who is that person that's referred to in paragraph 12? And that has to have been possibly the president, possibly Jared Kushner, possibly Don Jr. Those are the ones that could have been high enough up to be above a senior campaign official.
Seth, as a prosecutor, not everything that is alleged is formally charged as a crime. Do you view this as an indictment that is fundamentally about obstructive activities, full stop? Or do you view it as obstruction with the implication of attempted collusion?
Well, I think it's the latter for certain. You know, this is obviously on its face an obstruction indictment, but of course Mueller's mandate is the collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign to influence the election. So if we presuppose that there was this quid pro quo, an offer of dirt on Hillary Clinton in exchange for a promise to reduce or eliminate sanctions, for example, the way prosecutors look at this is this would be additional overt acts in furtherance of that conspiracy. In other words, the two principals, the Russians on the one side and the Trump team on the other, distanced themselves, didn't want to have their fingerprints on the wrongdoing, so they used intermediaries. And that's the way prosecutors look at this sort of thing. Also, it can be evidence of consciousness of guilt. The GRU clearly has the ability to send out a bunch of emails, and Trump or one of his colleagues could have called the Russians and said, hey, why don't you guys get this stuff out into the public? They didn't do that. They used intermediaries. That can be evidence of consciousness of guilt. It can also be overt acts in furtherance of a conspiracy.
And Seth, again, on the law, as a prosecutor, and I'm going to get to our very other qualified guests, but on the law, I wonder what you think of the passage that Mueller includes, and he emphasizes that Stone wasn't just gossiping or making big random requests. But right here on page 7, what struck me as so damning was Mueller including that Stone was explicitly trying to find certain emails on Clinton dating back to 2011, asked for that to be relayed as a question, like a document search, to Assange. And allegedly person 2 then passed that on, and there was BCCing to make it real. Why do you think that's in there? That doesn't strike me as something that he needs to prove tampering, for example.
Well, it surely doesn't, but it shows proactive coordination. It shows affirmative steps, overt acts that are taken to facilitate a potential underlying crime. And because it's being done at the direction of people within the campaign, potentially the highest levels of that
So
campaign.
you're talking conspiracy.
Correct. This is all conspiracy law. That's exactly right. And of course, under conspiracy law, the actual completion of that conspiracy doesn't need to take place for it to be criminal. It may have been carried out and successful. The election may have been tampered with, but even the efforts to undertake wrongdoing like this is criminal in and of itself.